Hello and welcome to Yatesy's Espresso Bar. I'm joined by Adam and we're recording this on Wednesday the 26th of August, the day after Nottingham Forest once again failed to progress in the Carabao Cup and also failed to beat Leeds United for the second time in 4 days, which we'll talk about in a moment, but we'll also be discussing Glasner's squad, transfers in and out, and looking forward to the trip to Anfield at the weekend. So, Adam, you were at the game last night. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's not easy to play the same team that beat you on Saturday and go into this game with a fresh mindset of, right, okay, this is another game, we've got to go in with a fresh sort of outlook on the game. It wasn't easy. It felt a lot worse last night. Now, the ground was pretty silent. I think, to be honest, the atmosphere at the game on Saturday was pretty poor as well. It just felt like it was flat performance-wise, crowd-wise, and they almost went in with an expectation of not winning the game, and Leeds, for me, completely controlled it from the offset. After about 10 minutes, it was just all Leeds for the remaining 80, and I think that caused the crowd and the atmosphere to be a little bit flat.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely a sort of a wait and see kind of thing with Oliver Glasner in place. But before we talk about what happened last night, this is Ger Lynch from the Leeds View podcast, who we spoke to the other day, and this is what he thought about last night.
How are you, lads? Unlucky in the last two games. I think there wasn't a huge amount between both sides, to be completely honest. I think all the stats and everything else show it that way. The big moments went in our favours. Probably not in yours. I think Matt Sells needs to do better for the free kick in the first game last weekend, but happy to take the win. Also, from tonight's game, I think you guys need time. I think Glasner's style is there. You can see the fingerprints, but it's going to take a bit of time for everyone to get on the same page. Some decent performances. Ola Aina, I thought could be very, very useful for you this season as well. Interesting to see Diaman make his debut tonight but not finish the game. But Leeds' entire premise of the last two results has been completely built on the fact that Leeds have got that solid backline. James Trafford at the backline, along with Muharmovic, Bial and Rodon in the last game, and in this one, Muharmovic, Rodon and Nico Elvedi making his debut. They put in some very senior players there who've got, well, Muharmovic is young, but very calm, very comfortable on the ball, very comfortable in the possession. And one of the big things for me was that Leeds seemed relatively comfortable out of possession, which is not a Leeds trait that we've had over the last couple of years. But that was the basis for Leeds to go on and get the 3 points, and when they needed the moments, the big moments didn't fall for you guys. Chris Wood having that chance in the first game, I think he snatches at it. Chris Wood in form probably scores that goal. And then tonight again as well, when you do manage to get through and Wood does nutmeg Elvedi and gets into the penalty area, I don't think he's expecting Joe Rodon to make the run that he's made to try and get back in around and make the tackle. And then when you do have another chance with Wood to put it in the corner, it's a really good save by James Trafford. So margins in this one, it could have been the other way around easily as well. But again, look at the stats on the game. There's very little between the two sides. You need a bit more time for Glasner to bed his ways. Clearly, it's never easy with a new manager coming in. But I don't think there'll be a huge amount between these two sides come the end of the season. If you can get into the international break in a decent position, come out of it the far side, far better off. Yeah, you will. You got some decent players though. Very Ola Aina, I think, has had a decent game in both matches. Wouldn't be a player I wouldn't mind taking at Leeds either in that position. Schlager got a lot of the ball, didn't do a huge amount with a few guys in midfield. Callum Wendu in that 10 position, that wide 10 position, looks very interesting. He likes to run at people. I think it plays into his strengths, some nice touches. And as was said by you guys going into this game, James McAtee in that 6 looks interesting as well. He was tidy against Leeds in the first game. So fingers crossed we don't get you in the FA Cup. I'd like to go a few months without seeing you guys again. But look forward to chatting to you when we do get a chance. Looking at these two, we're happy with the points and we're happy to go through to the next round of the Cup. But work to do for both sides still a little bit before the window closes. See you later.
Right, so a couple of interesting points then. I want to talk about Ola Aina in a little bit, but the key thing Ger was saying was we need a bit of time. I think we can agree with that. If we look back at Glasner at Palace, it took him a little while to get going.
Yeah, I mean, Palace and Frankfurt, Frankfurt, his first game in charge at Frankfurt manager, they lost to a Division 3 side in Germany. So it does take time. It's a difficult system to learn, but it's also the intensity is far higher. The what you have to do as your role is so more defined, and it doesn't leave much room for expression outside of the role that you need to do in this system. So look, the players are struggling with it. They're really struggling with it, but this is normal. This is a teething pain you have to go through when you have a manager that plays a system like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ger mentioned Ola Aina a couple of times there. On Saturday, we were making the gag that Aina probably isn't going to fit in, and then at 60 minutes, he looked like he was done, had run out of steam. One thing I noticed last night was he was much more direct. There were a couple of points where he got sort of into the Leeds box and he went straight for the snapshot rather than normally he'd probably try and play it across the box to bring someone else in. He went straight for the shot, and that's what Glasner's been saying all along: is go for the shot. You never know where the rebound might end up.
Yeah, he certainly tested Trafford early on with that. I'm not sure he meant. It was hard to tell if he meant to shoot or not. It looked like he tried to cross it and maybe got the angle wrong, but it was a good save by Trafford. And yeah, it's getting into those advanced positions, and you're not playing with wingers. You're playing with two tens, so you kind of have to have some width from somewhere. And obviously those tens can drift, but at the same time, if you've got your wing backs getting involved that high up the field, it leaves an overload on one side. So that chance for Aina in that space is exactly what you want to see from this system.
I did think, well, how did you feel about the team selection at the start, especially playing the three strikers? Um,
Yeah, I was a little bit confused when I saw the team, mainly because I thought Luca Netz would have started. I think for me, it might not be the most popular of opinions, but Luca Netz fits the Glasner system a lot better than Ola Aina does. And I think Aina did do well last night. He got into good positions, but Luca Netz is a natural left footer playing left wing back. And I think Nico is better on the right, whilst obviously Nico was player of the season on the left and he switches well. I think if you're going to play Nico played as a right wing back before. He has played this position, but I would say if you're going to play Nets on the left and Nico on the right. I would have think that you're playing in the League Cup, you've got an opportunity. Whilst you're playing a good side, you've got an opportunity to play Nets and just see how he does naturally. So that was a little bit surprising. I think that the centre mid partnership, I was absolutely fine with on paper, although it didn't really work. And then you had the front three. I don't think Glasner sees Callum Wendo as a striker. I think he does see him as a 10. I don't think many of us see Igor Jesus as an out and out nine. I think he does float and he's better last night. Although I did think he had his worst game in a Forest shirt last night, and I am probably his number one defender. I think he was pretty poor last night, and Callum Wendo definitely played. I actually think quite well. I think he looked quite bright in spots. So it was an odd selection, but when you've only got three fit strikers at the club, playing them all in one game does seem, or at least supposed to be strikers, it does seem a little bit one of them. But it's soon to be four strikers, isn't it? So we'll see.
yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. Yeah, I thought on Saturday we looked like the gap between the midfield and the attack for a large part of the game was too wide. I thought last night the gap between all the players was too wide. Leeds had their wing backs pushed right up forwards, which kept our wing backs very, very wide but deep. And then that meant that the central four were quite far apart. And then because the front three are attackers by trade, they weren't necessarily dropping as deep as they needed to give support to those. And I think that's probably why we lost so much of the ball so often. Our players were just too far apart.
Yeah, I think we just completely lost the midfield battle. I mean, I think Ampadu was outstanding last night. I think he's very much a very good defensive midfielder in the Premier League. I think that Longstaff and Tanaka did really well in there as well. Tanaka especially, I thought he was brilliant last
I
night for
thought
Leeds.
Tanaka had an amazing game, actually.
Yeah, he's a good player. I think the reason he's not starting for Leeds is just purely because of Anton Stacks being fantastic as well. Tanaka's a good player. I think he'd start for a lot of teams in this league. The difficulty you have is that when you're adjusting to this type of system, the centre midfielders you need one of them to be someone that breaks the play up and one of them to advance the ball. That's kind of the system that this works in. And I felt that Schlager is certainly seen as the player that can advance the ball, get on the ball and pick the pass. But last night I thought he was really, really poor. I think he struggled to find a red shirt at times. And I don't think we naturally have that type of player. I think that even McAtee, whilst he technically does have that ability, I think it's going to take him time to adjust to playing as an eight and a two rather than playing as an attacking midfielder, where I think he's probably a bit more natural. And then the centre halves just didn't. I think positionally just struggled where they needed to be. It's not about playing in a three; it's about being dragged from pillar to post. Because if the three at the back don't have the wing backs in support and they don't have a holding six in front of them to support, they kind of get dragged to the ball. The first goal was, if you look at Jaya Cunha's ball watching. He's not
Mm.
looked behind him. He hasn't taken a little look over his shoulder because systematically he's probably expecting the fullback to be there, but because of how the system is, the fullback wouldn't be there because it's a wing back. So if he looks over his shoulder, he stops that happening, and the first goal doesn't happen. It's little things like that where we just have to get that right, and we really struggled to get that right last night.
Yeah, yeah. I think there was definitely an aspect of both defensively and with the ball. You could see that the players. I used the phrase on Saturday of the players aren't on the same wavelength yet. Um, I can't remember who it was on Radio Nottingham. I think it was Brian Laws. Um, who was basically saying, well, it's really simple. What you do is you keep the ball, you receive the ball, and then you give it to one of your teammates. But I don't think that's what Glasner wants. He wants the ball to get forward as quickly as possible. And I noticed when Murillo came on, I thought he made quite a big difference simply because when he picked the ball up in front of the goal, he played one of his long passes. He released Dominguez with an insightful pass, and there was no one else. There was too much of us passing it sideways still. It reminded me a little bit of when Postecoglou came in. There was lots of passing it sideways and people not really sure what they needed to do. I have more confidence that we can get to where we need to be with this manager, though.
I think it's. I think you're absolutely right, and I think the point is that the centre halves that play have to be very comfortable on the ball. You had that in Glasgow's systems where you have your left and right centre back be quite comfortable on the ball, and then your central centre back can just be quite a bit of an enforcer. Like it can. I know Milenkovic has had a lot of stick recently. I think Milenkovic deserves some of the stick he's had. I don't think he's been at his levels, but you've got to understand it's going to take time for him to adjust to playing in a three rather than a two. When you have your best central defenders out there, it will be Murillo, Milenkovic, Diamande. Diamande has a great passing range as well. So you're going to have your two wide centre backs be, breaking the lines by being out of position, if you like, playing centre midfield. They then give it to the tens or the your eight and your six to progress into a space where they shouldn't be, which then catches teams off guard. It happened a lot for Palace last season. It's how they scored a lot of their goals. They they do struggle and did struggle under Glasner playing against the low block or playing against teams that are going to be a bit more solid defensively. They did probably better against your better sides, which is something that Forest are used to. But we need to find a way of playing without Morgan Gibbs wide at times because last night there was no creativity. And when Morello came on, it did get better. We were advancing the ball into better positions, but your centre half's going to do so much. Do you know what I mean? Like you still have to have that creative spark, towards the top end of the field. And it just feels like when Morgan Gibbs White isn't on the pitch, we just look really lost.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And the key thing there, we've both mentioned it a few times, is getting the time now at the end of the game. It wasn't a heated discussion, but I was saying to someone, he was saying that's probably the worst performance I've seen in years. And I was like, really? You don't remember last year? And then I was saying, and then it took Glasner a little while to get going at Palace. I think it was something like 10 games where they were really struggling before they hit their stride. And he immediately replied, Marinakis isn't going to give him that long. How do you feel about that? I think he probably will.
So I've seen this a lot on Twitter this morning, and I completely disagree with that point. I think people are they look at the most recent things happen in football. It's very much a instant coffee league. Everyone wants everything straight away. And last season we had a unprecedented manager shifts, right? And it was a mess. The fact that we stayed in the league out last season was probably a miracle having that many managers come through the door. Before Nuno, I think you would really struggle to find a manager that was unfairly sacked and not given enough time. And actually, in a lot of respects, some managers were given too much time. Like I think Chris Hughton was given too much time. I think that Cooper probably could have lost his job a month earlier.
I
Like
think
the
Cooper stayed on for almost a year because of us.
Yes, I think that's the thing. Like Marinakis is not. He has his reputation now in the media of being this quick trigger. If it's not going well, he'll sack you type owner. He isn't. That's not what he's been pre-Nuno. It's just last season was a bit of an outlier, and I do believe it's an outlier. Oliver Glasner is one of the top five most paid managers in the Premier League, right? This is not an instant thing. This season, if you're expecting Forest to qualify for Europe and win trophies and stuff, I do think you're being unrealistic. And I think that where we need to be looking at is between 15th and 10th and stabilize the ship and get these players used to this system. This is not going to be a hit the ground running thing. He didn't hit the ground running at Frankfurt, nor did he at Palace. Did quite well at Wolfsburg at first, but then this you have to understand that these things do happen. And the Leeds game, for example, the league game, I might be in the minority here. That was a 0-0 game that we managed to lose.
Mm.
I think you play that game 100 times, and I think 99 times that ends 0-0. And you look at that and say, well, it wasn't spectacular, but it's a point on the board. So, and that's your best 11 playing. So I think there's going to be a narrative around Forest, and there's going to be the media narrative of, well, Glasner's not got long, he's going to get sacked. If it's not going right within 6 games, 7 games, he's going to get sacked. We're more intelligent as a football club to understand that Glasner's system takes time. It has taken time everywhere. If you expect a Glasner to come in and win his first 5 games and Forest be top of the league, challenging for Europe straight away, I don't think you understand Oliver Glasner. I don't think you understand the way that he operates. And what we don't want to do, and I've seen a lot of opinions online saying, well, we shouldn't have sacked Vitor for this and all that sort of stuff. I always understand that. And I do get that point. And I think the way that Vitor was treated probably wasn't fair. But Oliver Glasner is an elite manager that will eventually take this club to the next level. But you have to be patient and you have to give him time. He will get there. But my call to action to the fans, anyone listening to this, be patient. It will happen, but we need to be patient.
Welcome to Yatesy's Espresso Bar.
So the rumor is today Liam Delap's coming in for his medical. I think I did read a stat this morning that apparently when he was playing for Manchester City under 23s, the highest number of assists came from James McAtee passing to Liam Delap. So that bodes well. Also, Glasner said he wants 2 signings. The rumour is that's going to be a right wing back. And then we've also got Dylan Backward. It seems to be going out on loan. Who do you see coming in? Just as importantly, who's going out?
Yeah, look, I think Liam Delap, to start off with your point there, is definitely not who I would have chosen. I think he wasn't my first choice, but you have to look at it this way. I trust Oliver Glasner wholeheartedly, and if he thinks that Liam Delap will come here and develop and, be, I'm not going to judge him for what happened at Chelsea.
No.
Right? How many strikers have gone to Chelsea and it hasn't worked, but it's worked elsewhere? It almost seems like a bit of a cursed role as being Chelsea's number 9. So I'm certainly not going to hold that against him. I think I think the better sample size to look at is probably Ipswich. He did really well at Ipswich. Obviously, Amari Hutchinson's in the side as well, that assisted him a couple of times that year, and they built a good relationship. So it seems to make a lot of sense. He's 23 years old. He's English, which people might not like this, but homegrown quota will always inflate price because it will. Is he a £45 million striker right now? Probably not, but that's modern day football. Price is so subjective. And the point that I'd like to make on Liam Delap is that people say, well, Chelsea are making a profit after he failed. Chelsea bought him for a relegation release clause of £30 million. His value was more than that at the time. If there was no release clause in his contract, he would have gone for more. Chelsea are only making a profit because they bought him at a release clause price. The price that we've paid for him is probably what he would have been sold for at the time if there wasn't a release clause. So I think that explains the price a little bit. I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on in Glasner's system. I do think there's a good player there. In terms of other players we need, personally, I would like to bring in a goalkeeper. I don't think that John Victor is going to challenge Matt Sells, and I'm not going to jump on the Matt Sells bandwagon about Saturday. It happens. There should never have been a 2-man wall either. So I think it was his fault. Of course it was. He would know that. But the 2-man wall was also an issue. His performance last season probably wasn't as good as it's been. And I was in the summer saying that we should keep Ortega and Ortega should be number 1. But we are where we are now. I'd bring in a new keeper. I'd bring in another wing back. I think people are saying about right wing back, and I do understand it, but I think that's Nico Williams' most natural position. So I would almost be more tempted to bring in a left wing back, although I do actually really like Luca Netz and think Luca Netz fits the system well. So I'll probably go goalkeeper, wing back, and I bring in a centre mid. I understand that McAtee is really liked by Glasner. I'm not saying I don't see it with McAtee. I get the vision, and I think he's an incredibly talented footballer. 10 minutes into that game against Leeds, when he did that little flick, and I thought, here we go. Now he's got a bit of confidence. Now we're going to see the McAtee that Pep loved at City. So, but I still think McAtee has a future at Forest, and I really hope that he does well. I'd go and sign Lamine Kamara from Monaco tomorrow. I think that we should have signed Sangare from Lens. Sorry. I think that was for me the signing that a lot of clubs should be making, and it's not based on week one. It's based on the fact that he's a fantastic footballer and he's one of the best players in Ligue 1 last season. And we didn't sign him. Brentford did, and Brentford made another smart signing. Shock horror. But Lamine Kamara is someone we should be signing before the end of the window. If the rumour fee of about 50 million euros is correct, then he's an absolute bargain at that price. So yeah, that's where I'd go. I think that's what we need. I think we need 4 more, including Delap, 4 more before the end of the window.
Glasner's obviously said too. I do agree. One thing with Delap at Ipswich as well is one of the things that I noticed he used to do really, really well was use his pace to move out into the channels, and that seems to me to be an absolute perfect fit for how Glasner wants to play, and not at all how Maresca was playing at Chelsea. So yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Backwell on his way out, I can't see how he fits. It wouldn't surprise me if Callum went on his way out. Although I thought putting him on last night, it stretched their defence a little bit because he was playing wider than the other Jesus and Callum Wendo, and that's possibly a useful thing to do. But Glasner apparently likes a small squad, likes even smaller than Nuno's. So at the moment, we're probably too big for him.
Yeah, I mean, Backward is just systematically doesn't what Backward's good at doesn't fit this system at all. The only way that Backward could play in this team is a wing back, and respectfully, that's not something that I don't think anyone wants us to see. I don't think it'll work. So Callum's a weird one. I definitely think he could operate in that Sarr role at Palace. I'm not saying that they're exactly the same sort of player, but I could almost see like that sort of inside forward position. I think Callum could play it really well. So I don't know. I think that second 10 is definitely a talking point of who it is. Glasner seems to like Ndoye there. I'm not so sure about that. You've also got Amari Hutchinson. You've also got Callum Hudson-Odoi, and then you've got Jesus and Callum Wendo, who, if they're not number 9s and they're 10s, they're fighting. So you might have 5 players playing for that position. I'd be surprised if all of them stay at the club, and that would shock me, if I'm being honest with you. The only other thing that I've seen suggested, which could happen, I wouldn't like it to happen because I think it makes the team worse, but you could play Gibbs White as the 8 instead because of his passing ability, and then play 2 10s. But I think creatively you're going to struggle there if you do something like that. So it's a headache for Glasner. I say that.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Where we find ourselves is just with more questions than answers. Andoni Iraola's come in, and Liverpool supporters should want him to be the best version of himself, but that comes with risk. There's a little bit of a funny thing, Rich, where Andoni finds himself right now is that he wants to play the way in which he wants to play, but already on Monday Night Football, Jamie Carragher is suggesting moving Dominic Szoboszlai into Florian Wirtz's position. Everywhere he's gone, Iraola's played 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1, depending on how you look at it, and that really isn't Dominic Szoboszlai's game. But the problem that you have is that when you see sides run through the middle of a Liverpool team for the second successive season, in a way, everyone's instinct will be, well, how to show it up. I don't know that'll be Iraola's, and why I think this game could be really interesting. And Liverpool can get hurt in this game, but I think it'll be really interesting from a Liverpool point of view, because I suspect you'll see him double down on what he's been doing so far in terms of how he sees Liverpool shaping up and the sort of way in which he wants Liverpool to approach the game, which is forward first, vertical first. And that could well suit Oliver Glasner, and it could well suit Nottingham Forest, partially from the point of view of counter-attacks, but also because, well, you know what this Liverpool side wants to do. So I'm looking forward to the game. I'm looking forward to Liverpool, Anfield, getting to see this side. There's a bit of pressure, I think, on a few Liverpool players, maybe unfairly, but that's the way it is, and it's also the way it is when you play for Liverpool. And a number of these players now who might have a bit of pressure on them, they're in the second season, so it should be a fascinating little encounter. And I've got real faith Liverpool can do the business. Isak and Beard looked excellent in pre-season. I know that Nottingham Forest will have a really strong, robust back three over the course of the game. I'd be surprised if they give many gifts away, especially because coming to Anfield, it's clear what the job is. But hopefully Liverpool can do the decent thing from our point of view, and hopefully we can get it done. But it'll be two imperfect football teams, two football teams that are still in development, going head to head.
Welcome to Yatesy's Espresso Bar.
So you're going to Anfield on Saturday. How do you feel about it? Given that we've beaten them twice last time we went there.
I know, I'm used to going to Anfield and seeing Forest win.
Not many can say that.
I know. It's a great time for going there. Look, I think I watched Liverpool against Newcastle and I thought they looked really, really poor defensively. Iraola it demands a lot as a system. So again, that's going to take them time to get used to. I think they were incredibly fortunate with the game ending the way it did with a slot-sized penalty. I'm not actually 1,000% sure it was a penalty. I think it was a little bit harsh, but these things happen. It's football, isn't it? But other than 90+9 equaliser, they would have lost their first game, and we can get at them. I do think we can get at them. I think the difficulty that we've got is that I think the way to get at Liverpool is almost exploiting the flanks, and that's maybe not what we'll do systematically, but it's a simple adjustment to the tactic, just to say, like, drift out wide a little bit more, because that's where you can hurt them. And again, Glasner's system works better against, teams that are going to come at you and let you have a little bit of open space. The thing that we need to get better at, and the key to beating Liverpool or getting a result there, is being quicker on the ball. We have when you're playing a system like this, you have to be one-touch passing. You have to be round the corner passes, clever little dinks and stuff to get into that open space that you create by having this system. Too many times against Leeds on Saturday and Tuesday, we wanted to be on the ball too long. The gap that would have been played in was gone by the time that a player got his head up. We need to be quicker on the ball. We need to have a bit more confidence in what we can do getting forward. That's the keys to getting a result there. Otherwise, I think we're going to really struggle. I would take a point now gladly and move on. I think it'd be a great point to go there and get something, kickstart the season and say, right, 2 games, 1 loss, 1 draw, is what it is. To be honest, before the start of the season, if someone had said to you, you're going to get a point out of your first 2 games, would you have been that surprised? You probably would have thought you'd draw against Leeds and lose to Liverpool, but you probably wouldn't have been that surprised. So we've got to get something from Liverpool. And I think we can, but I think we just got to be a bit sharper and a little bit better than we've been.
Yeah, I think the point about moving the ball quickly, you can see the players just hesitating, and I think that's because they're caught in two minds, as this is what Oliver's told me to do, this is what I naturally do, as it were. So it's that transition. But then it seems like Liverpool are in a bit of a transition themselves. They have been for years. but all right, so thank you to Ger from the Leeds View, thank you to Neil from the Anfield Wrap, thank you Adam, and thank you to you for being with us. Remember, you can keep up to date with us by subscribing in Spotify, YouTube, or your favourite podcast app, or you can visit 1865.football and enter your email address, and we'll mail you with every episode and article as soon as it's published. We'll be back at the weekend following the trip to Anfield, and we hope to see you then. Come on, you Reds.